Welcome to the Well-Rounded Grappler. I am your host, Coach Stanley. These episodes are dedicated to all my wrestlers, past, present, and future, as well as anyone that has helped me along the way. My hope is to give inspiration or motivation to anyone on their own grappling journey. On the Well-Rounded Grappler, we will be talking with various individuals from the grappling world, from coaches to competitors in wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, and sambo. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening. We have another awesome episode today on the Well-Rounded Grappler. Mark Ironside, an Iowa legend, joins us. He was a two-time state champion in the state of Iowa. Then he went on to wrestle for the Iowa Hawkeyes, where he was a two-time national champion. Who is his coach? You guessed it, none other than the legendary Dan Gable. We talk about what it took for Mark to get to the next level, and we talk about his scraps he had with both of the Brands brothers. Was it easy? Absolutely not. Find out more on this episode of the Well-Rounded Grappler. Awesome. Mr. Mark Ironside, this is an honor. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Really, really good. Beautiful weather here in Iowa, finally for a day anyway, so we'll take it.
Yeah, I got some family that's still back in Illinois. They said that it was it was snowing a couple days ago.
Yeah, this last weekend was nasty, and it's turkey hunting season here, which is my favorite time of year to be out in nature and chasing the gobblers and doing stuff like that. So it's about time the weather's started cooperating.
So if you could please start out by introducing yourself and give a little bit of a short version of the accomplishments you've had in wrestling.
Mark Ironside, I went to Cedar Rapids Jefferson High School in Cedar Rapids, where I currently own Ironside Apparel and Iowa Style Apparels in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was a two-time state champion there in high school. Went on down to the University of Iowa, wrestled for the legendary coach Dan Gable. I was a four-time All-American there, four-time Big Ten champion, two-time national champion, and a Dan Hodge Award winner, 1998. So that dates me by quite a bit. So that's pretty much my accomplishments. After I graduated from college, I kind of teetered with the international wrestling aspect of things for a little bit. Placed third in the Olympic trials in 2000, and then after that just kind of retired and started working in the real world. And things weren't the same back then as they are now from a financial standpoint or anything like that. So then I'm getting married and having children in 2001 and just kind of moved on, and still plenty involved in the sport of wrestling, doing camps and clinics and color broadcasting for the Iowa wrestling program every year, and stay involved in the sport heavily. So it's a lot of fun, and once it's in your blood, it's hard to leave it.
So where did the career originally begin?
I have an older brother that's 2 years older than me. We didn't know anything about wrestling growing up. He went to middle school one year in 7th grade and was offered in middle school, and so he went out for it. And then he came home and he, would practice moves and stuff on me in the basement on the carpeted floor with concrete underneath it, and that was really good and fun on your knees. And so then he was in 7th grade, 2 years. I was in 5th grade, and I attended a tournament then. I didn't know anything about the sport other than what, just watching him and him practicing moves on me. I attended a tournament then with, just shorts and t-shirt and tennis shoes. I didn't have nothing or whatever. And that's where the kind of career just kind of took off from there.
Awesome. So how did you do in that first tournament?
Terrible. Coincidentally, my very, very first match of my career, my entire life at that tournament, I wrestled Jeff McGinnis.
Wow.
Yeah. And he teched me. I think the periods were only like 1 minute long at that time or whatever, and he texted me in the first period. I mean, it was over before I even knew it happened. Obviously Jeff McGinnis at that point in time, we were the same age. He was in 5th grade, I was in 5th grade, but he'd been wrestling for a long period of time already, and very developed and very good for that particular age group. And I went 0-2 in the tournament. I didn't win any matches, and I remember on the way home from that tournament crying to my mom and in the car. I was just so mad, and that's what I do when I get mad. I kind of have a temper, especially back then, and just tell her I never want to wrestle again. I never wanted to wrestle again. It just didn't go good. And I think like 2 or 3 weeks later, I entered another tournament in Cedar Rapids, and there was only 4 kids in my bracket, It wasn't like it was a big tournament or anything like that, but I ended up winning that tournament. I practiced with my brother, learned a little bit more in that 2 to 3 weeks, and ended up winning that tournament. And then just the feeling of winning the tournament, standing on the top block in this little high school gymnasium, and just from there on out, and that feeling, I never looked back. And that's kind of where the career just kind of took off and escalated from there.
And then as you entered middle school, did you join the same team that your brother was part of before that?
I didn't wrestle for the YMCA or any wrestling club, which back then there wasn't like all the clubs around like what there is now. It wasn't, now wrestling clubs are like businesses, and there was really none of that. There were just feeder programs that, went into high schools, which still around a little bit. You see feeder programs and stuff. I didn't do anything besides go out for wrestling in 7th and 8th grade. And then I entered it once I became a freshman in high school, and, I started wrestling, on the team then. But about 8th grade, I think I started doing a lot of summer wrestling, a lot of freestyle wrestling. My brother and I, when we were in 6th and 7th grade, we started traveling, doing a lot of wrestling, going to wrestling camps. Camps were a lot bigger back then than what they are now these days. And we learned a lot, and it was nice having a brother that was similar in size, and so we could go to these camps and clinics and stuff like that together and be able to have each other there and kind of drill on each other and practice on each other, and go back, if it was an overnight camp, go back to the dorm room or wherever you're at and take notes and write things down that you learn from each session and so forth or whatever. So like I said, though, by 8th grade, I started doing a lot of freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling. I really got involved in Greco-Roman, and that kind of helped a lot at an early age, learning how to hand fight and also hit position and how to throw, how to prevent from getting thrown and so forth. But that freestyle Greco-Roman career really took off from around 8th to 9th grade.
And who were some of these early coaches that you were working with?
I was very fortunate throughout my entire career. I always had great coaches, and not just coaches from a technical standpoint, but even more so just coaches that were willing to go above and beyond and put extra time in and take me to tournaments or open up the room to go in and compete with. And even when I was in 7th and 8th grade at Wilson Junior High here in Cedar Rapids, my gym teacher, Bill McNeil, who used to be my dad's high school wrestling coach during the wintertime, and he was a legendary high school wrestling coach. But at that point in time, he'd retired, and he was just a PE teacher, and he would get everybody else, in the gym class, kind of going about whatever the activity was for that day in PE when you're in middle school, whether it's playing basketball, dodgeball, whatever it may be. And he would roll out a section of a wrestling mat, and he would work with me and teach me wrestling stuff. So that's basically the first coach I kind of had, and taught me a lot. I had another coach in junior high, Rick Stahl, who's a very good Division I, Division II referee now as well too in the collegiate scene, and helped a lot. And Dan Rayner is an 8th grade coach, and then when I got to high school, I had some awesome coaches. I was very, very blessed to have some great coaches in high school. With Coach Dick Briggs was the head coach. His brother at the time was the head wrestling coach for the University of Northern Iowa. And we had some great assistant coaches too. It's good to have a variety of type of coaches and different mentalities and stuff like that on the staff. And one of the volunteer coaches, Brian Hall, and I became super good friends. And Dan Connor, who lives out in North Carolina now. I was just very blessed to have great coaches all along the way. And when I got to college, then obviously, Coach Dan Gable being the head coach was like a dream, and Jim Slesky being a very good technical coach, and then having Tom and Terry Brands, who were my idols throughout high school and that were still training at the World Olympic level, to be able to compete and train with them in the wrestling room every single day was just that was the best thing ever. So I was just in a perfect situation.
So as you were in middle school, were you watching Iowa matches on Iowa Public Television?
Yeah, I was. That's when I first got kind of introduced to Iowa wrestling, was through Iowa Public Television. My dad would watch some of the matches back in the day, early on when we were in 6th, 7th grade, back when Royce Alger was wrestling and in the 80s. And my brother and I would watch those matches. And then once I got to high school, especially, and Tom and Terry Brand started competing, my brother and I would tape every single Iowa Public Television match that there was, and we'd go back and watch those matches of Tom and Terry Brands especially, and we would stop them and we would pause them and we would hit in slow motion, and we learned so much from watching those matches. not just a technical aspect of things, but also how to compete because of, the mentalities that they had as well, too, and high energy and how important it was to be in top physical condition. But we'd wear those VHS tapes out, just watching them over and over and over. And it was so motivating to me. But then whenever, we could, because Cedar Rapids is only 30 minutes away from Iowa City. When we were in high school, we would go down and watch every live match that we possibly could at Carver Hawkeye Arena and just dream about being there someday. And then even when we were down there, we'd still, set the timer on the VCR to record the match on Iowa television. So I grew up at a really good time, throughout the Dan Gable era because he had so many phenomenal teams and so many great wrestlers to watch and learn from.
When you went to some of these camps, were any of them at the University of Iowa, or was Dan Gable or the Brands brothers at any of these?
No, I never attended a camp at the University of Iowa. At that point in time, I didn't come from a lot of money or anything. It just probably cost too much. And so we never really looked there. We mostly did like smaller camps and clinics where the only time I got any instruction from one of the Brands was Terry Brands came to a clinic one time at Cornell College, and Joe Melchiori came to a clinic, and Brad Penrith. Some of those veterans came in there, and they did a clinic at Cornell College for a week. So I got a taste of the Iowa blood then. I think Royce Alger was the one actually running the camp and clinic there. And then throughout some freestyle clinics that I did, they would have different Iowa guys come in on a regular basis, and Tom Brands came in one time and ran that clinic one night at Lisbon, and we're just a bunch of local high school kids who get together and have freestyle practices on Sunday evenings. I never attended an actual Iowa wrestling camp where I had Coach Gable as an instructor or Jimmy or any of the Brandses or anything like that. So it was all new and fresh to me once I got to the University of Iowa.
So go into that a little bit more. You said you were attending Sunday club practices at a facility, and then Tom would come into those practices?
Well, Tom came to one. He was just a guest clinician one time. So like on Sunday nights, Brad Smith, who's a legendary high school coach here in Iowa, won multiple state titles, started at Lisbon, and then went to Iowa City High, and then went back to Lisbon. On Sunday evenings, we would have a freestyle wrestling club, basically, and that was when I was in high school, and a bunch of, really good local wrestlers would all go. I mean, Jeff McGinnis was there, the Light brothers are there, the Hatcher brothers are there. I mean, it goes on. And they would have a lot of – Brad Smith was a national champion for Iowa, and so he had some ties and connections to Iowa, so he'd be able to bring some guys in. And I just remember because I was just in awe of, Tom Brands was actually there and teaching me wrestling at a particular time, and that was just mind-blowing to me that I even have him in the presence. But I never – knew those guys. I never met those guys really or anything like that, or worked with them or anything. I never even stepped foot in the wrestling room until I was recruited and graduated from high school.
Did you realize how tough Iowa was as a wrestling state when you were in the thick of things as a young man before university? I mean, more junior high, high school. Did you realize Iowa was kind of the mecca for wrestling for the country?
No clue. None. I just, I just it was where it was. That's who I competed against. That's where I grew up, and I would go and wrestle on weekend tournaments all the time. My mom would take me to tournaments on a regular basis throughout the weekends, and we would travel when I started doing a lot of the freestyle circuit too, and we go to regionals up in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We go to cadet nationals. We go to junior nationals. Kind of travel all over or whatever, but we'd hit local freestyle tournaments every single Saturday in Iowa. We'd always be somewhere wrestling freestyle tournaments, and it was just an absolute blast. And a lot of great wrestlers would show up and compete against each other. Nobody ducked each other. And you're not, I don't want to say enemies on the mat, but you're competitors on the mat. But off the mat, you developed, pretty good relationships, and it was fun. And just fun to have, once you get to the cadets or junior nationals, and then you're all on the same team and competing with each other. Just developed a lot of great friendships.
And so you said you won 2 titles in high school. Was that junior and senior year?
Correct. Yep. I did my freshman year of high school. I did not wrestle varsity. I was at a 3A school, which is the biggest class in Iowa. The guy at my weight was a senior at 125 pounds, and he actually won a state title that year. I could not beat him out. So I dropped down to 119 pounds, wrestled off a guy there who was another senior, and he got 4th in the state that year. So then I dropped all the way down to 112 pounds to wrestle off another senior, and he got second in the state that year. And I was at 125, and I couldn't go up to 130 because my brother was there, and I couldn't beat him. So I just had absolutely nowhere to go. So I never wrestled varsity as a freshman. And then my sophomore year, I took third in the state. And then my junior, senior years, I won state titles.
That must have been a great learning experience for you as a freshman. You have three, well, if you include your brother, four really good wrestling partners that are probably teaching you. You're going through a lot of battles in the room. That was probably still a good, rewarding year for you, and it probably got you better for that sophomore year. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, like they say, and kind of the saying goes, you're only as good as your workout partners, and that's where I was extremely, very, very blessed throughout my entire career. I mentioned just a little while ago about how blessed I was to have great coaches all the way through my career, but even more so just the competitors that I had in the room with me, with teammates. I was just extremely blessed. I was always on good competitive high school teams where we pushed each other. We were always in the top 3 in the state as a team. And then it just even excelled even more, obviously, once I got to the University of Iowa, where I redshirted my freshman year. But then the next 4 years, we were the national team champions all 4 years. So I was always very blessed to be on good, top caliber teams, whether it was in high school or college, and had great workout partners and good role models and for upperclassmen and people that, would push you to the next level and get the most out of you. And that were very competitive wrestling rooms as well.
As you're finishing your sophomore year, going into your junior year, how did you feel you were starting to set yourself apart from the rest of the high school wrestlers in the state?
I don't know. I think just the biggest thing is that what set me apart that year was I just wrestled so much freestyle and Greco-Roman that summer between my junior and senior years. I know that I got over 120 matches in that summer. And if you're wrestling 40 matches in a high school career, that's like 3 seasons and 3 high school seasons in one summer.
Sure.
And I was doing freestyle and Greco-Roman tours and wrestling both styles. I'd show up to weekend freestyle tournaments and I'd be wrestling freestyle and Greco both on the same day. And not only that, I was doing cadets and juniors both. So I might be wrestling 4 divisions in one day. Mm-hmm. I'm wrestling live on a mat. And all of a sudden, my brother who's in the corner or whoever, another teammate or something saying, "Hey, you're up on mat 3. Let's go, hurry it up," or something, Mm-hmm. So I'd walk off the mat and say, "Okay, where am I going?" And I would go right to another mat or whatever. And, same thing for the juniors and then the cadets and juniors. I wrestled both Greco and freestyle with the cadets. And then I was home for the junior camp for a week. And then I wrestled both freestyle and Greco at juniors as well, too. So that just really kind of catapulted me and took me to that next level. One thing I needed to do a lot more of is I needed to get better at wrestling on my feet. And that really helped me that summer to learn about, like I said earlier, like really hand fighting, but hitting good solid leg attacks and finishes and just getting better at my feet and my takedowns and stuff like that. So, I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but that summer between, after my sophomore year of placing third and going into my junior year where I won it the next 2 years, that was a big difference maker and a big leaps and bounds. And I think I just matured as an athlete, as a person and as just physically as well, too. I started maturing a little bit more, so I was kind of a late bloomer and just felt young for my age. I mean, when I graduated from high school, I was only 17 years old. I was really young for my age, so I had a little bit of catching up to do, and I think that helped a little bit once I started maturing going into my junior year.
So who has taken you to the off-season tournaments and practices? Was that your high school coach? Was that somebody else? Was it your buddies? Was it your family? Who was that?
Early on, it was my assistant coaches at the time, Dan Connor, and like when I was a freshman, and then he left and went to another school and a local school. So I was still around him and worked out at their school and stuff too. But Dan Connor was just a volunteer coach at our Jefferson High School until he got a head job at another local high school. And then also another volunteer coach that came in, his name was Brian Hall. And he really took me under his wing, and we'd go to freestyle tournaments on a regular basis. But then also my mom and my dad, whenever he could make it. My dad didn't really make the local tournaments on the weekends because he worked a lot of weekends. But he tried to make time and take time to make the bigger tournaments like the junior nationals and stuff like that or whatever, and maybe some of the regionals. I know he took me up to La Crosse, Wisconsin for a regional my senior year where it's just him and I. But a couple of coaches, and then Coach Hagery, who was another assistant coach, and Coach Briggs, the head coach early on. Just a lot of the coaches, but then my mom really stepped up and helped for the ones that were a long ways and far away as well too. Someone always took me. It was never a doubt whether I wasn't going to be able to go or not. I found a ride, I found a way, and made it happen.
I tell stuff like that to some of the kids that are on the team, right? Because I coach high school. I'm out here in North Carolina. And the kids that want to be there, they're going to be there, right? They're going to find the way. Working with teenagers, it's an excuse factory, right? Like, I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that, right? My grades, classes, whatever. But the ones that want to be there are there. And then the ones that want to succeed in the classroom are going to do it and are going to make time for wrestling. Some of them work. Some of them play multiple sports. So it's all about putting in that time. And if you really want to do it, they're going to find a way.
100%. You got to have the passion for it. And I just, maybe that's where I just naturally had set myself apart from others, is I just had for the passion for the sport. I wanted to compete. It was never a situation where, my parents were like, hey, you got to go wrestle this weekend at this tournament or anything like that, or even my coaches. I was the one begging them to take me. I didn't really have to beg them, but I wanted to go. And even through my high school career, a lot of my buddies, they didn't wrestle in the summertime. It was more of just an in-season sport for them, and they would go party and do all the things that high school kids do, and I never, ever did that. I never drank throughout my whole high school career. I promised Coach Dan Connor that I would never drink, and then when I got to Iowa, Tom and Terry Brands had never drank, so I never drank, and I just never really got in the partying scene. The only thing I ever did in my free time in the summer, whenever I had free time, is I would just go fishing by myself. I loved to go fishing, and I was kind of maybe a loner a little bit, but I didn't care. I wasn't, I could see the difference between right and wrong and tried to stay the right path. And I just always wanted to be on the mat. When I was a freshman in high school, I loved the sport of baseball. Baseball was my favorite sport. Loved baseball. But then my freshman year, when I went for baseball, I started getting benched because I was missing practices and stuff like that because I was at freestyle stuff, which was 100% understandable. So that's when I kind of realized that, I just wanted to wrestle full time, just because I chose wrestling over baseball because I was 100% in control of my own destiny. From an individual standpoint. So, I didn't have to worry about the guy in front of me striking out with 2 outs and then he's the third out and now I don't even get a chance to at bat, or I didn't have to worry about the guy at shortstop making an error and then we lose the game or whatever. It's basically all 100% on me. It was in my own hands. And if I knew that if I trained myself to be the best, I could be the best. But if I trained myself just kind of, half-ass it, then I was just going to be an average wrestler. But that's what I loved about it. I could do the right things and it was all in my own hands. And I was very fortunate to have, like I mentioned, the good workout partners and teammates and good coaches and stuff. So I had all that extra with me to take me to that next level. But I was the one that, just kind of saw it and had the passion for it and was able to push myself and continue to watch tapes and learn and improve and get better at all time. And that's it was always, I put a lot of things on the back burner, especially when I got to college. I didn't get chances to go fishing as much. I didn't get chances to go hunting like I like to. And I always said that someday I'll make up for it. And I do. But at that particular time, there was no excuses. I just wanted to do it all the time and do as much as I can of it. I never got sick of it. Never got burnt out of it. And it was always coming from me.
Out of all three styles, which one do you personally like the best?
I like collegiate the best. I know a lot of people say they like the freestyle. I am very thankful that I wrestled Greco-Roman as much as I did every summer, my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years of high school. Greco-Roman taught me an awful lot about the sport of wrestling. And I used a lot of things from Greco-Roman wrestling and transpired that and transferred it into my collegiate wrestling. I like the collegiate wrestling because it's more black and white. It's not as political as the freestyle can be. It's more controlled, like someone actually physically gets a controlled takedown. That's a point. Whereas freestyle, there's a lot of quick, easy, cheap points in freestyle, which can work into your favor or it can work against you. But I just really like the controlled aspect of collegiate wrestling probably the best. But I mean, I love them all. I mean, I don't dislike freestyle at all whatsoever, or Greco-Roman or anything. But if you ask a question, I had to choose which one I like the best. I like the collegiate style wrestling the best.
As you're going through high school, you're getting a lot better. You're winning a state title your junior year, coming up on your senior year, going to win another one. Were you considering anywhere else but University of Iowa?
No, I never did. It was either Iowa or bust for me. That's all I grew up watching was, the Iowa wrestling program on Iowa Public Television, and watching Coach Dan Gable coach. And I knew from a competitive standpoint, a training standpoint, and a mental standpoint that's where I needed to be. That's where I wanted to be. And that's what was going to take me to the level that I knew that's what I needed. And that was where I was going to excel the most. I was always super polite and very appreciative of the letters and the phone calls that I received from, other colleges and stuff, but I never led any on. I never went on any other college visits. It was either Iowa or I wasn't going to wrestle in college. I'd just go get a factory job right away, which there was a lot of good factory jobs around that time. And I'd just start working in the real world and making money and saving money and doing that right out of college. But I was not going to go to college unless I got recruited to the University of Iowa.
So even if Iowa State or UNI, if any one of those schools, or maybe they did, offered you a scholarship, still flat out no?
Yeah, they offered me scholarships, and I shouldn't say they offered me scholarships because I never let it go that far. They contacted me and reached out to me to see, if I want to come on a visit and so forth or whatever, and I politely said thanks, but no thanks.
And did Dan Gable come to your house to recruit you?
Yes, him and Coach Jim Zaleski.
Walk us through that conversation a little bit, or how that went.
I remember when he came over and he met my parents, and we went down in the basement and talked a little bit about the program, but he didn't really talk, honestly, wrestling a lot. The thing about Gable is he just asked a lot of questions about me. He wanted to know, he was just trying to learn a lot about me, kind of learning about what I did on and off the mat and kind of what made me tick and how my mentality worked. And he did most of the talking and trying to get as much information out of me as he possibly could. I didn't have any questions for him. I was just a young, naive kid that had Dan Gable in my house and in the basement, and that's all I cared about. That's all I wanted, is like, Dan Gable's here. If he offers, it's kind of a running joke to where I got inducted into the Iowa High School Hall of Fame, and he was the one that inducted me and spoke for me. And up there, he kind of made a joke about if I would have asked for more scholarship, he would have given it to me.
Yeah.
And I just never asked. I didn't really care, But then when I got up and it was my turn to talk, I said, it's kind of funny that he says that, but the joke's on him. I said, if he would have asked me to come for free, I would have came for free.
Yeah, right.
So,
of course.
And that's kind of how I looked at it. If Dan Gable wanted me, I was there.
That's really neat. That's a great story. So, before Dan came over and talked with you, Dan and Jim, had they already reached out to you and said, yeah, we want you, yeah, we want to give you a scholarship? Or was it they had to come meet you first and then decide if you were kind of right for the team?
Correct. Yeah, they had reached out via letters at the time, send letters to the high school and, just let me know that they're interested and so forth or whatever. But nothing was ever, and then they didn't even offer me anything at that particular time. I went down on my visit. I think they were just kind of feeling me out, and then they brought me in on a visit, and I was on a visit, with Joe Williams at the time and Jeff McGinnis. We were all three on the visit together, and I was just like, that was my first opportunity being in the Iowa wrestling room and kind of seeing what it was about and watching the practice in there and just absolutely in awe. And then it was some point in time after that, not much longer after that, then he came to the house. And I think there was a signing date at that particular time and offered me, and we signed, and the rest was history.
Did you say that McGinnis was the person you faced in that first wrestling match?
Yep.
So did you guys see each other in high school or in junior high, or as you're coming into Iowa on that visit together? Were you guys already friends?
We weren't really friends. I mean, we never seen each other again until my junior year of high school. I had one loss my junior year of high school, and I had one loss my senior year of high school. And they were both to Jeff McGinnis.
Man.
We were not at the same weight. Okay. He was a weight class under me, but just to show you what kind of a competitor that Jeff McGinnis is that when he wrestled for Iowa City High, I wrestled for Cedar Rapids Jefferson, and we were both in the same conference. And 2 years in a row, my junior year and senior year, when we wrestled each other in the conference, he bumped up a weight just to wrestle me because he wanted to wrestle me. He wanted more competition. He wanted all the competition he could get. And he beat me both times. And, the first one was semi-close, like 1 or 2 points. The second one, he got me by probably 3 or 4 points, I think. But it was pretty nerve-wracking, too, for me. It was the most nervous I've ever been for a wrestling match in my entire life. I'll never forget that because the whole entire Iowa wrestling team and coaching staff came to the gym in Iowa City to watch that match, and they all sat in that front row.
Oh,
and,
man.
I was, and at that time, we had both been recruited, and we were both coming to Iowa. So it was a big deal. But I had a lot of respect for Jeff McGinnis and his credentials, 171-0, I believe, in high school, or 181-0 in high school, and never lost a match in high school, 4-time state champion, junior national champion, multiple-time junior national champion. I mean, he was the Spencer Lee and even more so probably, bigger than Spencer Lee coming out of high school. And he had his personal coach and Keith Morlam, and he was around the program a lot, and I just didn't have any of that, and I hadn't caught up to that yet. And I think once I got to the Iowa wrestling room and I was around it a lot more and had some really, really good instruction, and I was able to take things to a whole nother level in a real quick manner. And McGinnis and I would wrestle and tangle in the room quite a bit, and I'm not gonna lie, there were some brawls, there were some fist fights, and I think a little bit of it came from me just being who I am, and I don't like to lose and have a temper and kind of being ornery. And two, he was a little bit the same way, very stubborn, but he was used to beating me, and then all of a sudden I was kind of catching up to him, and it was pretty much an even playing field, and he didn't like it either. So, but it was a great matchup between the two of us. And throughout our collegiate career, though, and being teammates and being at separate weight classes, we did become good friends, and really, really thankful for that friendship that we had and developed and still have.
That first year coming into Iowa, did you take a red shirt?
Yes, I did.
How was that first month coming in there? Did you take some lumps, or were you already starting to be a standout? No,
I remember crying a lot just out of anger because I couldn't score any points. I cried on a regular basis because I'd be wrestling a guy. Well, my first thing is I wrestled Tom and Terry Brands for pretty much about 5 times a week out of 7 days in a week. 4 or 5 times a week I was wrestling those guys and just getting my butt kicked, and I just couldn't score points. And I just what I was really good at coming into college, which was hand fighting. My hand fighting skills, those guys were 10 times better than me. They were stronger than me. They were more physical than me. They were just, that much better than me. You're talking multiple-time national champions, and they won the world titles right out of college as well too. So they were both world champions as well too. So, but they always wanted to wrestle with me because I would fight back and wouldn't quit. And finally, Coach Gable had to step in eventually after quite some time and says, "Hey, you need to get some partners that you can score points on, and get some different partners and that you can get in on and you can wrestle around with a little bit, And I was like, well, yeah, that'd be great. But when they ask me to wrestle every day, how am I supposed to say no? I can't tell Tom and Terry Brands no.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Gable says, I will take care of that. You work on finding other partners.
Sure.
So then we narrowed it down to where I was only wrestling them 2-3 times a week versus 4 or 5 times a week. So that helped a lot. But I never shied away from good workout partners. It was, if it wasn't Tom and Terry, it was Bill Zadok who was the start of the time, or Mike Mena, or Lincoln McAravey, or McGinnis, it was always really good wrestlers. And, it wasn't very often that I would have just a kind of just pick a lighter type of competitive person in the room, or even, when Doug Schwag walked in the room later down the road, it was kind of like, wrestling him every day. I just wanted someone that could come at me and compete and make me better. And I never really sought out easy competition in the room.
Were the Steiners up there at that time?
Yeah, Steiners. I wrestled Steiners. They were graduated. I wrestled Troy and Terry quite a bit. They helped me a lot, especially Troy Steiner helped me a ton from getting out off the bottom. When you're in high school and you're pretty successful in high school, you don't get taken down very often. So you're not on the bottom very often. And that's where I really struggled my freshman year of college, was the bottom position. So I'd call up Troy Steiner and have him just come in on a Sunday at 1:00 in the afternoon. I'd just say, hey, I just want you to ride me for an hour straight. Just ride me. If I get out and I get an escape, I go back down. If I get a reversal, I go back down. Just ride me for an hour. And after about 2 or 3 workout sessions of that, of him not just riding me, but afterwards teaching me and coaching me and helping me along and teaching me how to get out, I was able to, defend leg riders and be able to get out a lot better on the bottom. So, and they were great to wrestle on the feet as well, too. So, I had so many good, even Tom Ryan was in the room training at the time, when I was a freshman. Mm-hmm. So, just really good work. So many great workout parts. Chad Zappel was another one that helped me a ton my true freshman year.
That's awesome. So there's a lot of people that move on and go into the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and it's, it's official and stuff now. Back then, was there an official Hawkeye Wrestling Club, or were people just kind of hanging out? They want to compete at a higher level. They graduated, but Gabe was like, yeah, you can stay.
Yeah, we had an official Hawkeye Wrestling Club back then, and it was supposed to be a paid stipend every month, but it was piddlywinks, money.
Sure.
It was pennies compared to like what it is now, what these athletes get now. So yeah, you wrestle for the Hawkeye Wrestling Club if you want to stick around and train and wrestle for the world Olympic level. So at times too, it was different too, and it wasn't part of the actual iWrestling program. So then the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, you'd have to have a curtain in the room, pull the curtain, and then the Hawkeye Wrestling Club members could be on one side of the curtain, and the iWrestling members could be on the other side. And it wasn't like what it is now with these regional training facilities and all these clubs with all the money they have in them, paying these wrestlers, and a nice money type stipend so they can live comfortably. Not just squeak by, but live comfortably, as most of these guys are single male athletes, and then the money that they're getting from camps and clinics as well too. They're doing really well now, and things have come a long ways compared to they were way back in the day financially, and great for them. Kudos to them.
So let's talk a little bit about how you prepared for matches. We could skip right to college, or if it was the same in high school as it was in college, what were you doing before a match started? Did you have any pre-match rituals? Did you do the same warm-ups every time? Did you like to do a little 50% live wrestling drill? Tell us what you did.
Well, a lot of the preparation for matches and stuff, it goes right before the match starts. You're already training. You're training in July for something that's going to happen in February type of thing, or college in March. And you're always thinking about the end result. You're thinking about the end game and the optimal position you want to be in. That's at the top block of the state high school wrestling tournament or the national tournament, whatever you might be in. And so you're always thinking about it. But as it gets down to 0 hour and it's time to go and step foot on the mat, I had a ritual. Like when I was in college, it was easy. I was wrestled 134, or now it's 141, which what they changed the weights to my junior year. I was always the third match, so I cut my weight the same every time. I always had basically same length of a weight cut. I always had the same amount of weight. Everything was a routine. It was down to a science. And then after weight, I'd typically always eat the same amount of food and have the same type of food. And then I would warm up the same before the actual match. And there was in the Carver Hawkeye Arena, it was always easy because that was your home place, and there was an athletic training room right outside the tunnel, inside that tunnel of Carver Hawkeye. And I remember for the first match at 118 pounds, I would just be in my full warm up and just kind of sitting around, relaxing, staying off my feet. And I could hear the announcer. And then as the second match came up, so I was on deck basically. I stripped down into basically a t-shirt and shorts and started really hitting foot fires and fake shadow wrestling or whatever. And then, when it was time to go, and then the match in front of me got over, then it was time to put the straps up from the singlet and snap on the headgear, and it was time to walk out of the tunnel and go. So it's just the biggest thing is just getting in a routine. And it wasn't always easy to get in a routine because when you're traveling, you don't always have the same workout equipment that you have at your home facility. Sometimes you don't have the same amount of time to make weight at a facility because of certain circumstances that are out of your control. You don't have the same area to warm up in. You got like a gymnasium hallway somewhere or whatever. You kind of have to makeshift. But the biggest thing is just trying to get in routine, knowing what you need as a wrestler and what your body needs to be ready, so that when you step on the mat and that whistle blows, you're good and ready, and you're warm, you're hot, and you're not just trying to work into it that first period, both physically and mentally. It's just the biggest thing for me was trying to find a routine. And sometimes, you don't hit that routine your first, 1 or 2 times out for the year. It might be January, before you really kind of get your weight really good and under control. You got a routine. Your body's used to making weight. And then you get in a nice routine as far as after weigh-ins. And then, it's nice for me, like if you have the same workout, drilling partners all the time to warm up with so that you're familiar with each other. You know what he needs as a warm-up. He knows what you need as a warm-up. So routine. It's got to be a good routine, and you stick to it. You find something that works, and you stick to it.
What about mentally? What are you doing mentally? Are you a person that has something that they repeat to themselves over and over? I'm the man. I'm going to dominate. This is my day. Or are you, hey, let's calm ourselves down? Or are you listening to music and you're just trying to shut your mind off? What did you do?
When I was growing up, there was an amazing highlight video or video that came out on Coach Dan Gable. It was called Gable Supreme. If anybody could ever find that and watch that, that was so incredibly motivating to me when I was in high school and that came out. And it was a video about following Coach Gable and the team around for a year, and they put a really nice video together, and it showed some talks. And one of the talks that was on that video was just a real short clip, and he was talking to the team before probably a round that they were at Big Tens or Nationals or somewhere. And something he said in there always stuck with me. It says, you don't get into it until it's your time to get into it. So that really made me think about mentally not getting into the match. Like, if Mike Mena's out there wrestling at 118 pounds, like I'm not going to get caught up emotionally in what's going on out there, or whoever's in front of me or whatever. I'm thinking about me. I'm staying relaxed. I was not a headphones type of guy listening to music and kind of like jamming out and getting all psyched up and ready to go, and stuff. My biggest thing that I like to do from an early age when I first started wrestling was to stay relaxed and to stay calm. And there were certain things that I would do. I mean, I took classes in college called relaxation techniques, and there were certain things that I would do to, mechanisms and stuff that would keep me relaxed and stay calm and cool, collective. And so when I was ready to go out on the mat, that's when the fury came out, was once that whistle blew. But thinking mentally before I go out on the mat, my mindset was I'm going to win the match. It was never, ever a situation where I just want to win. I just want to win. I just want to win this wrestling match. Because if you're thinking like that, you know what? You're only going to win 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. If all you're thinking about is just winning, that's all you're ever going to do is you're just going to win. But what I would want to think about is I want to dominate. What I would get nervous about, and I was nervous before every single match in my career. There's never a match I wasn't really nervous. The day that I become not nervous for a wrestling match, that's when I've gotten pretty cocky. But I would not be nervous whether I was going to win or lose. It was more so as I was nervous is like how much was I going to dominate by? My goal of every single time I stepped foot on the wrestling mat, especially the later I got in my career, was to win every match by a bonus point of some sort, a major decision, tech fall, or a pin. And that was my goal. And I would get nervous, like, oh my gosh, I felt like if I didn't get a major decision, that was a loss to me. And I took it personal. And there's a lot of matches, early on in my career that I didn't get bonus points. I didn't get a major decision. So, and I didn't like it. And I mean, even though I won, I walk off the mat like pissed off because, I should have done more. I should have done this. I could have done that. I want a major. You just want to dominate so bad. It was never about winning or losing. It was about dominating. And that was my mindset when I competed.
Awesome. Let's jump ahead. You're in was it the same case, junior and senior year? Those are the times you got the national championships? Yeah,
it was very kind of funny how my high school and collegiate careers kind of mirrored each other.
Sure.
To where I was third in the country, third in the state as a sophomore, third in the country as a sophomore in college. And then I won it both my junior and senior years, except for my freshman year of college. I actually wrestled and I competed as a starter, and I was sixth in the country, which if I would have wrestled in my high school career and I wouldn't have been behind all those really good seniors I was behind, I probably would have been, fifth, sixth in the state at that particular time. So they really, really mirrored each other. And I remember Gable commenting on that once about how, that showed that, I continued to progress as my careers went on. I never hit like a plateau and just kind of like got satisfied with where I was at. It was always progression. And they just kind of mirrored each other both in high school and college.
Let's talk about your first national championship. Who was that against? How did that match go, and how did you feel afterwards?
That was against Steven Schmidt out of Oklahoma State. He was a great competitor. Him and I were the same age, and we competed. That was my junior year. Him and I had competed like probably 6 or 7 times against each other up into that national finals match from the time we were freshmen and sophomores and juniors. And I beat him every single time, but it was never, ever an easy match. Up until that finals match, every single match that we had wrestled up to that point, he had taken me down first in every single match. I had to come from behind. And I won every match either by 1 point or overtime. And then I really put a lot of focus knowing that more than likely that's who I was going to have in the national finals that junior year. I started focusing on a couple of different areas to improve the match and kind of blow it open. But one of the main focuses I had was not giving up that first takedown, making sure I scored that first takedown. That first takedown was going to be very, very vital in that match. I knew with beating him probably like 6 times before that and being undefeated against him and winning so many close matches, with him getting the first takedown, I knew that if I could get that first takedown, mentally, that was really going to probably set him back because he had never beaten me and he'd always gotten that first takedown. So if I go in there and I get that first takedown and he's thinking, oh my gosh, now, I mean, how am I going to win this match? I've never even beat him and I've always gotten the first takedown. Now I'm behind her out of the gate. How am I going to come, you know? So that was very important to me, and I ended up winning that match. I don't even remember this, 10-4, I believe, by 6 points.
And walk us through that emotion after you won. How was it to feel to know you were a national champion?
You know, it's a situation is very similar to winning my first state high school title. It's just something you look forward to and you train for so many years and put a lot of time and effort into it. And it was just, I don't want to say a relief. It was more so just like, you know, I did it. It was gratitude. It was an accomplishment, and it felt good. It felt really, really good. It wasn't something that, like I said, it wasn't a relief. It wasn't a monkey, you know, off my back or anything like that. It was just like, I did it. You know, I did this. I set out to do this, and I set out to accomplish this, and I did it. It was just a very satisfying feeling. It was really, really good. Not just for me either, but my also for my parents and my teammates and my coaches too. You know, when I wrestled a lot, it wasn't just for Mark Ironside. It was for everybody that put so much time and effort into my career, and that's what was so much. That was what was so satisfying as well too. Just making other people happy and making other people proud. You know, when I can look over and win a national title and get my hand raised, and I look over in the corner and Coach Gable for that first one's clapping and looking right at me, looking in the eyes, and just seeing how happy he was, that made me happy and that made me proud.
That's awesome. You know, and you can't forget the hundreds of wrestling partners that you've had, your coaches in high school for taking you all over in these competitions, your family, probably your grandparents, if they were still alive, would come and watch your matches. There's just so many people that help someone along the way, not just in wrestling, but there's a good poster, and it's a picture of an iceberg, and it only shows the top 10% of the iceberg is above the water, and it says this is what people see. You got the championship trophies, you have the person that is competing in front of everybody, and then 90% of the iceberg is under the water, and that has everything else in there. The hours and hours of work, the camps, the sacrifices, the getting good sleep, the nutrition, the mental aspect, all that stuff. So it really, people just don't know how much it takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially, you know, in this day and age and everything's on social media and they just think these athletes are just superstars and they're just naturally born that good. And some of them are naturally gifted and more than others. But that's a perfect analogy with the iceberg. I've never heard that before, but it's extremely, very, very true. A lot of truth in that.
I'll email it to you. I have the picture of it on my phone. So
please do. I'd love to see it. And then, like you mentioned too, with the grandparents and so many people, your teammates and stuff, you know, after my national titles, or even when I didn't win the nationals, at the end of the seasons, I handwrote a lot of thank yous to a lot of important people in my life and sent them in the mail and told them I was appreciative of, you know, what they had done for me, you know, throughout my career or that year and so forth or whatever. I just think it's really important to do stuff like that as well too.
So let's move on to a little bit after college, which I definitely want to get into a little bit of the announcing. But the first question I want to ask, because I just got done interviewing Brent Metcalf about a week ago. He says that we got talking about you because I asked, who did you wrestle? I always compare you two as far as kind of the way that you wrestle, in your face, heavy hands, a lot of pressure, want to dominate. Did you really tell Brent Metcalf after the first time that you wrestled him that he really wasn't that good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was at Coe College. Yeah, I wrestled him in a neutral location and beat him up pretty good. And I don't remember my exact words, but I do remember that he took me down first. He took me down so fast and so quick. But then after that, it was pretty much a beating in my favor. But I told him he has to learn to get better, but more so mentally tougher and in better shape, better condition. But at that time when he came in, it wasn't, the prime time of the year for him to be in tip-top shape either. I think he'd been kind of off the mat a little bit, wasn't in the best of shape or whatever. But I will say this, I think it really motivated him. And we continued to wrestle throughout his career. And I would go down in the room and use my alumni days and go in and wrestle with him. And he was able to return the favor. There's definitely both sides to that. So it's not like I just whipped him and then just sailed off in the sunset. I gave him plenty of chances, and it was just a gradual thing where he just kept getting better and better and in better shape and tougher mentally. And then obviously his career shows how good he became, both physically, mentally, and technically, and a great wrestler. And at the end, he was beating me. There's no doubt he was beating me.
That's awesome. So let's get into a little bit about your announcing career. How did that end up happening?
Well, back in 2001, when I got done, I was done competing at that time. I was done after the 2000 Olympic trials is when I stopped competing. And in 2001, our radio broadcaster guy by the name of Mark Allen at the time, he transferred over and became a women's basketball announcer. So they were looking for someone in the wrestling world to fill his shoes. So they just happened to call me and want to know if I'd be interested in doing this. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to be able to stay involved in the sport and learn the broadcasting type of thing and be around the guys and travel with the team, which I still do. And so I've been doing it since 2001. And that's kind of how it took off.
But just like any profession, right? Because I'm a teacher, getting used to teaching things to people, getting used to talking in front of an audience, that takes practice. So before that first session in 2001, had you done any announcing whatsoever?
I never, no announcing, zero. Maury Adams was the play-by-play announcer, and I was just the color. And I remember him, I think, was the first time I ever did any announcing. We were at Penn, the University of Pennsylvania. And I put the headset on. He's like, hey, just be natural. I'll lead you into kind of some things to say or whatever. And he was really good. And I just started talking. And I remember after that broadcast, he's like, oh, my gosh. And he goes, this was really easy for you, wasn't it? I'm like, well, here's the thing. I'm talking about something that I've pretty much done since I was in the 5th grade. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm teaching a science class here, you're talking about something, a sport that you love, you've done since you were in 5th grade, you have a lot of passion for. And so obviously, yeah, it's going to come easy. And I don't think about it or look at it or when I'm on the radio, I don't think about it. Sometimes I forget, and it's not a good thing. Sometimes I forget I'm wearing the headset. And I'm just talking wrestling. I'm just, I sometimes forget that, you need to be semi-politically correct sometime, and some things come out that probably shouldn't come out or whatever. But I'm calling the sport as I see it, and I love it, and I enjoy it. And it's a lot of fun for me to stay engaged in the sport of wrestling.
Are you still announcing for the team?
Yep.
Awesome. And are you just doing home matches?
No, I travel every match.
Oh, wow.
Except for in the fall, early on, when it's my super busy time for work, I typically don't start traveling with the team until after Christmas.
Who has been some of your favorite wrestlers to announce, to give play-by-play how they're doing on the mat?
There's a lot of them in there. Obviously Doug Schwab was a big one. Brent Metcalf was a big one. Those are guys that I would come train with and compete with. Tony Ramos, I used to wrestle with him quite a bit in the room too. So anybody I was wrestling with in the room, it was a lot of fun for me. But there's other wrestlers out there too that you just never really knew what you're going to get. And it was just always entertaining. And the one that comes to mind right now from this year is Kobe Seabreck.
Sure.
A guy like him comes out on the mat. It's just fun. It's entertaining wrestling. And then, obviously Spencer Lee is Spencer Lee, and he makes it really easy to call because he goes out and takes care of business and gets the job done, so he was a lot of fun and makes my job super easy. I've always enjoyed the wrestlers that create a lot of action, because then it gives us something to talk about and we're not just sitting there twiddling our thumbs and waiting for a 1-to-1 match and overtime to come for someone to finally start doing something. I just really appreciate and enjoy all the wrestlers throughout the careers that, went out and they let the fur fly and they got after it. Jody Stripmatter was a good one and a fun one to call. So, there's so many of them. I've been doing this for 2001, 23. Well, it'll be 23. So, 22 years I've been calling Iowa wrestling matches. Just think about all those different athletes I've called throughout their careers. Mark Perry was another fun one to watch. Comes out of scrambles like no other. He just right when you think he's taken down, he comes out of something. Yeah, there's a lot of different guys in there.
Can you think of a particular match to where you got extremely fired up? Maybe it was somebody's...
Michael Kemmer versus Mark Hall.
Okay.
No doubt. Adam Kemmer versus Mark Hall when he beat him in the Carver Hawkeye Arena. I don't even know the year, 2020.
You're probably 3 years ago. 3 years ago is what I'm thinking.
That match right there that's the match that I can remember just like, oh my gosh, like, did that just happen? Did that really just happen? And then the most recent one just from this year was at the Big Tens when Patrick Kennedy beat Amin from Michigan. Uh-huh. That was just a really hard-fought, gritty match, and it was a great takedown at the end by Patrick Kennedy. There's been so many of them along the way. So many. Brett Metcalf when he beat Slater up there at the Big Tens. That was a big one. There's just been so many of them. But that Michael Kemmer match, that was probably the biggest one that I can really remember. Just kind of losing control and just forgetting I'm on the radio and celebrating, and that was just that whole entire duel meet. It was just two teams just going at it and throwing like heavyweights, throwing blows at each other, and so many upsets and things could go either way. And that's why you wrestle the matches, and the crowd in Carver Hawkeye Arena is just absolutely electric. And there's been a lot of those matches along the way. Tony Ramos getting a couple of big pins against Penn State, Carver Hawkeye Arena. I don't know, a lot of really awesome matches.
Yeah, was Mark Hall ranked number 1 that year?
I believe so, yeah. He was ranked number 1. I think Kemmer was number 2.
Oh, okay. I thought he was a little bit lower, Kemmer, but no, that's good. That was very electric. Even the videos you watch online, you kind of just see everybody jumping out of their seat at the same time. And Mark Hall, definitely no joke. I was looking up some research on various people. Minnesota allows middle schoolers or junior high schoolers to compete in the high school state series. He's a 6-time state champion, which is kind of interesting, at the high school level. He won the Minnesota State as a 7th grader and as an 8th grader. So, he's no joke.
No, yeah, he's no joke is right. In Minnesota, they got some really good wrestling up there, too. So, yeah, Mark Hall, he's a stud. He is a stud, there's no doubt. And Carver Hawkeye Arena, though, just didn't treat him very good. I don't think he ever won inside Carver Hawkeye Arena. Mm-hmm. But he's a heck of a good wrestler, a great wrestler, and a lot of fun to watch. He's so gifted and so talented, and just Kemmer had his number that day, so it was awesome to see.
Let's talk a little bit about your store. So tell us a little bit about Iowa Style Apparel.
There's two. There is an Iowa Style. That's okay. Iowa Style Apparel is my retail business. So if anybody wants anything Iowa Wrestling or Iowa Hawkeye associated or related, that's where you go to get that. That's Iowa Style Apparel. That's the retail business. And then Ironside Apparel is my custom business. So if like I say, a high school wrestling team wanted some shirts or some singlets or a business or anything that's custom, that's done at Ironside Apparel and Promotions. And then the retail side of the business, they're in 2 completely separate buildings. They're about 3 miles apart. Iowa Style is the retail aspect of it.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I ordered a new Iowa shirt from you this year with Herky on there and stuff with gray. So I needed one. I was starting to get stuff worn out, I get the Iowa shirts, and of course, I want to take them inside the wrestling room with me. I wear them pretty proudly because I'm a big fan. So how did the apparel business happen? How did you walk into that? You said that after wrestling, you were thinking about going and working for a factory. So how did it change to an apparel business?
Well, obviously through wrestling, I made a lot of connections and got to know a lot of people and grew up in this area, not too far from Iowa City. And right after I got done competing, I actually became a route salesman for Pepsi Cola and drove a semi and was a route salesman. I did that for about 6 or 7 months is all. And from there, a friend of mine was talking to me about someone that owned an apparel company like this and was looking for a salesperson. And I was like, well, if all I got to do is sell like T-shirts and pens and stuff like that, I know all kinds of people. So, I mean, everybody needs T-shirts and pens and stuff for businesses. So I'll give it a whirl. And I started working for that company as a salesperson for like 5.5 years. And then I finally just said, heck with it. And I said, I can just do this on my own. I'm pretty independent and want to do my own thing. So I just started it. Left and started it out of my basement of my house for like 1.5 years and did everything by myself, books, ordering, selling, you name it. And then after about 1.5 years, I got a warehouse and hired a secretary. And we were in that warehouse for 3 years. And then I bought an empty lot and built a building in 2011. And then we just continued to grow since. And now I'm at the point where I just kind of have a good nucleus of employees and we do really well, and we just got a good team put together here and a good regimen, and so it does really well. It does good. You got to about anything, I mean, it's to do good and be successful, you can't get complacent. You got to continue to keep showing up to work every day. You got to be working hard. You got to be thinking ahead, and you got to outwork your competition, and you got to think outside the box. So it's a lot of fun, but there's also days too as being an owner of our own company. When somebody walks up and they see your sign on outside the door, they just think that, oh, he owns his own company. He's got it made. He's got all the money in the world and blah, blah, blah. But people, just like you're talking about the iceberg, they only see the tip of it. They don't see the 90% that's submerged in there, what it took to get here and what it takes to keep it afloat as well too. They don't understand that, see that, and know that I was just in the office this last Sunday for, working for 3 or 4 hours. And, it's an interesting business, but there's something for everybody, and I really enjoy it. And I have a lot of fun with it.
So Iowa Style Apparel, is that just clothing from the University of Iowa? So all the sports teams and things like that, or do you do other colleges as well, or what else do you sell in there?
So I sell, and we produce all of our own products, and I sell over there primarily all Iowa, University of Iowa affiliated products. We have a lot of Iowa wrestling, obviously, Iowa football, a lot of just generic Iowa Hawkeye type stuff. We have toddler stuff, youth stuff, women's and ladies, and unisex, obviously, and caps and sweatshirts and T-shirts and joggers and shorts and you name it, it's in there. But then we also have some University of Northern Iowa stuff, some Iowa State stuff, and then a couple of local high schools stuff in there as well too. So we have quite an array of a lot of different things.
So my wife is actually expecting in August. It'll be our first and probably our only. I'm 40, so it's a long story, but, we kind of beat the odds. If I wanted to order an Iowa Hawkeye baby shirt, are you the guy that I should call?
100%. We've got Iowa Hawkeye baby shirts. We've got Iowa wrestling toddler shirts. We even have one of our best sellers. A couple of things is in the toddler things. We have Iowa Hawkeye robes, both for boys and girls. And one of our biggest sellers, too, is really little teeny infant Iowa wrestling singlets that replicate the actual singlets that the University of Iowa wrestling team wears.
Wow. That's cool.
You'd be surprised how many of those we sell, but people want to get, their 6-month baby picture in or, whatever, your little infant baby picture and stuff taken in that, so they're always dreaming of the baby gets born and they're going to wrestle for the University of Iowa someday and be a national champion. And no better way than buying one of those singlets and getting a picture taken with it, So yeah, we have a lot of unique different stuff. We're not in Cedar Rapids. We're in Cedar Rapids. We're not down in Iowa City where, the bookstore is and where Shields is and stuff like that. We're just in Cedar Rapids. And what I just always talk about, we're small but mighty.
And then as far as Ironside apparels, so you're basically a person that coaches can call, like maybe somebody from your alma mater, right? Gives you a call from the high school. Hey, Mark, we're looking to get shirts for the season this year. And then they work with you on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we do the custom business here, Ironside Apparel. I do anything from, obviously tons of outfitting, tons of wrestling teams, fan apparel to singlets to warm-ups to, doing all kinds of different business stuff, from banks to other sports teams, baseball, softball, basketball, football, you name it. Just a lot of corporate type businesses, construction companies. I mean, you name it. Anything that you need custom done, we do. And we've done pretty much everything under the sun here. So, we're not just like one sport oriented, but obviously during wrestling season, that's a big time part of our business here with having, the wrestling background and the wrestling connection. So we stay really busy during that particular time of year.
And then what did you learn? And you can already hear the passion in your voice. You're already saying some of the things that you would hear from a wrestling coach about outworking the competition and things like that. What have you learned in wrestling that's transitioned to the business world?
A lot. Self-discipline, especially when you're on your own business. It'd be so easy for me to sleep in it every single day and just show up to work, at 9 o'clock in the morning, like, most other people do, or leave at, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon and just go home and hang out and watch TV or whatever, I mean, you got to work your tail off, and it's nothing to be here at 7 a.m. and not leave until 7 p.m. and sometimes a lot later, or here earlier and leaving later. It just depends on what the time of year is and so forth or whatever. But the biggest thing is just you got to outwork your opponents and your competition. And customer service is the number one thing that I preach to my sales associates here and to myself. That we need to make sure that we respond right away in a timely manner, and that we get the job done, and the job gets done right. And, our prints, turn out spectacular, not just, oh yeah, that looks okay. You're Santa Claus every day. When you give a job to a customer, you want them to open the box and just have an amazing smile on their face and be so excited. It's like they're opening Christmas present on Christmas morning. You take great pride in that, and you can't forget about that. What you do every single day just kind of can become complacent, kind of old hat or whatever. But what you're doing, you're giving every single time you give someone something, the return customer, they're going to be excited about that. And the worst feeling in the world is when they open it up and you can kind of tell, and you see a look on their face, or you get an email or a phone call. It's like, this isn't really what we wanted. And then that's not what you want, but at the same time, because of that customer service is so important that, you make things right. Hey, here's what we talked about. This is what we're going to do differently next time, or whatever, give us a shot or whatever. So, but luckily there's a little bit of that in anything that you do in life, but not much of it. And you try to be successful as much as you possibly can. And you're always thinking ahead and preventing problems before they happen.
Yeah, we're getting ready to wrap up here. I was just going to say, it's hard to get this point across to a teenage mind, but I talk to them blue in the face all the time about the things that you learn in this room are going to help you in life. Simple things like showing up to practice on time, not giving up when you are down, cheering on you.
Not cutting corners.
Not cutting corners.
One of the biggest things I can probably say is you don't cut corners, especially in the sport of wrestling. If you cut corners in the sport of wrestling, you cut corner on your nutrition. You take a week off, you have poor nutrition, that's going to show in the result out on the mat. And when you and one other person are wrestling out there, not on a football field where you can kind of hide amongst 11 other guys, or a basketball court where you can kind of hide amongst 5 other guys, or a baseball field where you kind of hide amongst 9 other guys or 8 other guys. In a wrestling match, it's just you and somebody else, and everybody's staring at you. You cannot hide if you didn't take care of your nutrition that week. You can't hide if you weren't working on something technically, to beat the legs against a leg rider that day, and the guy rides you for an entire period. You can't hide if you haven't been doing a good job and putting the extra time in and making sure you're in shape and your conditioning is at top notch so you don't get tired out there. There's no tag team in wrestling. You don't cut corners in wrestling, and you don't cut corners in life. That's the biggest thing, and probably the best advice that I could give someone is that you always dot your I's, you always cross your T's, and you always go above and beyond, and you don't cut corners. And it's once you get in the habit of doing that and doing things right, just like any habit, good or bad, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Next thing you know, you start going above and beyond on a regular basis, and preventing problems before they happen and staying ahead of the game. It's just become second nature to you. You just can do it all the time, and then the more successful you're going to be.
100% agreed. The last thing is a little bit of advice. There's 3 different scenarios, and then I'll let you go. I know we're at 1 hour 15, so just a little bit longer than what you were hoping, but I swear we're almost done. Just a couple more minutes, sir, if you have the time.
Yep.
The first one, advice to someone that is thinking about trying wrestling for the first time, we'll say a middle schooler, we'll say a 7th grader wanting to try wrestling, what would you tell them if they come up and say, hey, Mark Ironside, I'm thinking about wrestling?
I'd say, if you're starting wrestling at that point in time in your career, you're going to be behind the ball a little bit, and you got to realize that. You have to understand that, just kind of like I talked about me wrestling Jeff McGinnis, when I was in 5th grade for the first time in my wrestling match of my life. I'm wrestling, a guy that's, phenomenal or whatever, and I'm going to get beat. And, the advice that I give you is that you don't quit on yourself early. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the sport. Stick to it. Stay with it. Continue to improve. And take those losses. You don't want to take them too hard, but yet at the same time, you don't want to just act like it's no big deal. You want to continue to have those losses motivate you. And there's a lot of matches. It wasn't just Jeff McGinnis that I lost to. I lost to a lot of local guys, pretty bad. I can remember one guy in particular. I lost to him 3 times. I lost to him the first time by 10 to the fall. The second time I lost to him like 10-0. Next time I lost to him like 3-1. Every time I kept getting closer and closer and closer, and then the kid ended up becoming a lot bigger than me, and I never got to wrestle him again. But I start whittling down those point margins, and that's what you start doing is you start whittling away at your career little by little by little by little, and you just keep getting better and learning and improving. And what people are blessed with these days is back then too is the internet. You can just get on the internet and start watching wrestling match after wrestling match and looking at technique video after technique video, and it's so easy to find. It's just right at the tips of your fingers, so you can always continue to learn, and there's always something you can do. The one thing that I would say is that I would try to do every single day throughout my career. I would always do this, and you can't be on the mat wrestling every single day. It's hard to be on the mat wrestling. First of all, it's hard on your body. 2, it's hard to find a partner, and it's just kind of hard to get in the room every day. But you need to do something every single day of your life, every day, 7 days a week, to get better at the sport. Now, some days it's going to be to go in and have a really hard wrestling practice, and it's a 2-hour wrestling grind with a tough opponent. One day it might just be going in for a drill session. One day it might be going for a conditioner where I'm gonna do some air dining, and I'm gonna do some treadmilling, and I'm gonna do a stair step. Or it might be going in one day just getting a good weight workout in. That's all I'm gonna do that day. It might be a day where I go out for a run. It might be a day where I don't get on the mat. I don't do anything. I'm giving my body a complete rest. But I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna watch some video. There's things that you do every single day, whether it's physically or just mentally, that you have to improve your game every day.
Yeah, and that answered the second question already. So what can a person do to get to the next level? So you already answered that. Last question. You have a wrestler not having the best year. Maybe he's a junior, been wrestling for several years. A good kid, there every day, hard worker, just for one reason or another, is not meeting his goals, is not having success. What would you say to that kid to try to keep his mind in there, for him to finish his junior year strong, to come back his senior year right, to not give up on the sport?
It's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough sport, and it really hurts when you lose, especially when you feel like you're doing everything right. But if you're not seeing the success that you want to see, and you just can't get over that hump, then it might be time to try to reevaluate things. Reevaluate kind of what you're doing for training, reevaluate what you're doing for your conditioning or your technical aspect, reevaluate what type of offense that you're trying to hit on your feet, or what you're doing on the bottom. Are you doing all stand-ups? Well, maybe you want to look at some sit-backs type of stuff. You start reevaluating some different things. Now, not jumping off the deep end and completely changing everything by any means, but just looking at some different approaches, some different things, and trying to get a different outlook on things, and kind of step outside and get on the outside and kind of look in and say, hey, what about this? Or try to look at some different techniques from some different people that you wouldn't. Like, a perfect example for me would be like in the Iowa wrestling room. I love Tom and Terry Brands and Dan Gable, and the intensity and the hand fighting and the brawling and the snaps and the, just really aggressive wrestling. But then I also self-taught myself, a nice John Smith low single by going out and getting a video of Pat Smith and John Smith of learning and developing a nice low single leg attack, and from a non-tie. And that really diversified my wrestling, and it opened up my arsenal. Now I'm only not attacking just from a hand fighting standpoint, but I'm also attacking from a non-tie standpoint. And I'm not only coming across, put my hands on someone, but I'm coming across drop stepping and coming right in on a low shot. And now I've really got my opponents kind of guessing, off balance, and so forth. So it's just good to look at different realms, even if it's a competitor of yours. even if it's, someone that you compete against on a regular basis or a team that you don't really like, whatever. Well, what are they doing right? What can I learn from them? You never stop learning. That's the biggest thing is you continue. Don't give up. We're going to continue to keep learning. We're going to continue to keep improving. We might just take a little bit of a different approach, but not completely changing up everything super drastically. So, and the number one thing is you never, like anything in life, you just don't give up on yourself. You just flat out, you don't give up on yourself, and the coach doesn't give it up on you. You don't give up on your coaches. And at the end of the day, if you put everything into it that you can put into it, and you do everything that you feel you've done right, then you know what? You're a success. You are a success in itself. You're a winner. And just because you don't get your hand raised at the end of the year on the top block or in the state finals, you know what? There's other ways of winning, in the sport of wrestling. And that's what's hard about the sport of wrestling is not everybody can win a state title. If you show up and there's a 16-man bracket, you know what? There's 15 other guys there that didn't win a state title. Or if you're ultimate, that's the other thing too, is that your goals, set goals that are attainable, that can be reached, but that you're going to have to work hard to get to them. If you've never been on the varsity, your goal is to be on the varsity, then you know what? That's a goal. You reach that goal. And once you get on the varsity, now, okay, I want to be a state qualifier. Okay, and then once you qualify for state, now I want to be a state place winner. And now that you're a state place winner, I want to win the dang thing. So you do it in kind of like steps instead of just kind of like looking at the one big picture. I just want to be a state champion and that's it. Well, look at where you're at. Look where you got to get to be. That's a long road right there. So let's just keep doing this in steps and in intervals, and we'll just keep gaining and gaining. I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. You can't just judge your success by if you won a state title or not. You have to judge your success about how it's not, just where you start, but it's where you finish. And if all of a sudden you were 6-12 as a freshman, next year you're 12 and 12. So now you're 500. Hey, that's a big improvement. That's a success. The next year, you're 20-6. So that's another big improvement. So there's different ways of measuring success other than just being a state champion and so forth. And that's what I think sometimes people forget about. And you got to look at where you're at and what you have and what your abilities are, and you continue to keep learning and improving again.
Awesome advice and awesome words from a legend. Mark Ironside, you are a legend to me. You are a legend to the state of Iowa and for the whole country. And by the way, Mark Ironside is a cool name, and it fits a wrestler perfectly. Ironside, just think about that, right?
Yeah, I was very blessed to be born into that name and be a wrestler. No doubt about it. Very, very lucky and blessed in that. And that was just pure luck. I'm just glad that I could semi live up to the name and do the name good, having kind of a wrestling name like that, Ironside.
Last thing, I have a wrestler that joined the team, and I'm not really concerned if he ever gets any good, but he has the coolest name I might have ever heard in my life. His real legal name is Fire Red Wine. What a name. What a name. So awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you for the shirt that I ordered, and I appreciate, just like I said, this is awesome. This is something very small time. Not looking to get famous with this, just give inspiration to my wrestlers and anybody in the state that wants to listen to this. And yeah, that's it. I really appreciate it, and I will make sure I send the finalized copy to you. I'll send you that picture that you asked for the iceberg and things like that. And besides that, I hope you have a great night, sir.
Well, thanks a lot for making it happen, Cole. And I appreciate you allowing me to give you time to do this. I'm sorry it took me so long to get this to you, but hopefully you get something from it. The athletes can get something from it. And feel free to email me or call me or text me whenever you want. You got any other information you need or any questions or whatever. So I'm always available. I'll get back to you at some point in time for sure. So thank you.
All right. Thanks. And if anybody ever wants to order a shirt, if you want something custom, make sure you go to Ironside Apparel. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. Have a wonderful night.
You as well. Thank you, Cole.